I'm Melanie Johnson, along with my co-host Jen Foster. We are both 13-time best-selling authors. We've published over 2,500 books and made all of our authors #1 bestsellers. We own Elite Online Publishing. If you want to become a best-selling author, look us up at eliteonlinepublishing.com. Now, welcome to the podcast that shares secrets from top industry experts that show you how to get lasting success and results. This is the Elite Expert Insider Podcast. Hey everyone, it's Melanie Johnson with Elite Online Publishing, and we're here for another super duper podcast today. It's an outstanding day. I'm here with my business partner from Elite Online Publishing, Jen Foster. Hey, Jen.
Hey everyone, how's it going?
All right, we have lots to learn today, but first I want to remind you that is to subscribe to our podcast. Make sure you subscribe and share it with people because we promise you will be motivated, you will be inspired, and you will be educated to make your life and the life of others better. That's what we strive to do every time we come on the air. So make sure you share that so you're not the only smart person in the room, that you can make other people smart too. And if you're looking to write a book or to relaunch a book, what we do here at Elite Online Publishing is we make every single author a #1 best-selling author, whether your book is already written or you're starting from scratch. So reach out to us, go to our website, and just hit that submission form, and we'll get back to you from there. All right, so today, business has changed so much and entrepreneurialism is growing at record paces. People are starting businesses left and right. Businesses are ending and new businesses are starting. So we're going to learn keys to having a successful startup. How do you not crash and burn? What are some of the pitfalls you should look for? How to make sure that you and your business can be successful from start to finish. So we have an expert, Ryan Frederick, that is joining us today, and he's written a book and he is an expert in that field, and we're going to get down deep and dirty and learn about how to make a successful business. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for coming today.
Melanie, Jen, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, Ryan, tell us a little bit how you got started in this and how you became the expert.
Yeah, very serendipitously. Joined what at the time was called a small business. We didn't call things startups back then. And we had some success with it. I think I was the third person in the door at that company. We grew the company over 7 years. Ultimately, the company got sold. The investors in that company invested in another problem and product that I wanted to build. And so we did that. And that had some success, and then it just became sort of opportunistic from that point on. And I think that's probably where I would even start with people is I think that based upon my experience and observing others over the years, that I think it's much better to be opportunistic and then get strategic inside of an opportunity than it is to try to be strategic when you don't have some sort of opportunity or problem that you're being strategic on top of.
That makes perfect sense. That kind of leads me into my question of how do you go from concept to producing a deliverable product or service and building a great customer base that wants to come back to you over and over again?
Yeah, I think the first thing is you have to start with the problem, and you have to become an expert in the problem. Because I think it's unrealistic now to think that you're going to be able to build a product that people value enough for them to purchase it, and for you to build a company on top of the product if you don't understand the problem at an expert level. And I guess what understanding it at an expert level means is you have to understand the problem better than your customers do. And if you do, then you have a chance of building a solution, right, to the problem that they would find valuable. If you don't, you probably are going to have an uphill battle, and it's probably going to be a pretty challenging slog to get through it.
Yeah, I love how you start with the problem, because a lot of times people say, I have this idea for this product and let's build it and let's make it. And they didn't even think about the problem or the audience at all. They're just thinking about the product. So walk us through how that all works. And have you had people come to you that say, like, I have this product, but they don't have a problem really to solve for it? Or how does that work?
Oh yeah, happens all the time. Sometimes people that say, I have an idea, they don't even realize that the idea is centered around a problem, but they're very sort of solution focused and sort of idea focused versus really understanding that the idea, what was the outcome of identifying a problem. And then there are those that build a product, start a company, start trying to sell the product or service, and they really have no idea what problem they're solving and if anybody cares about the problem. And that's when it becomes a very egocentric, ego-driven process.
Mhm.
And successful entrepreneurs are actually not very ego driven and very egocentric. They're actually very humble, and they work in the best interest of the problem and customers. And then that's how you build something that you can have some commercial success with. Not, hey, look at me, hey, look at with the thing that I'm building. It's about the problem and customers. And if you do that and you have that focus, then you have a chance of succeeding at it.
Yeah, I think Apple did a great job with that when they first launched the iPhone. They did a really good job with that. They didn't have any competition really in the marketplace when they launched that. Address how do you align your product with the competition in the marketplace, and how do you do to compete with the competition?
Yeah, I think really early you should pay no attention to the competition, because I think when you're really early, all you should care about and all you should focus on is the problem and customers.
Mhm.
Because really early in your product evolution, if you pay too much attention to the competition, then you are, because we can't help it, whatever we pay attention to is what we gravitate to, and what sort of consumes our even subconscious. So if you pay too much attention to the competition early on, then what happens is you end up being like the competition, you end up sounding like them, you end up looking like them, you end up building a product that looks very similar to theirs,
Mhm.
and you don't even know if they're succeeding in most cases, or how they're succeeding, or are they super leveraged, right,
Mhm.
financially or some other way. So you could be paying a lot of attention to competitors who are a house of cards, versus spending all of your time focused on the problem and customers. Because I can guarantee people that if they spend almost 100% of their time on the problem and iterating with customers on the problem, eventually they will find something that will stick and that will succeed. And if you spend any amount of your energy on competition really early, I think that it's just wasted energy.
I think that's really good advice. So let's talk about investors. So what if you have the problem figured out, the product figured out, you're starting to get your customer base. When is the right timing for getting investors, or is that even something you have to do?
Yeah, I don't think it's something that everybody has to do, and I think we've crossed a threshold over the last probably decade where now there's as much fanfare around a startup raising money
Mhm.
as there is around their product success and them landing customers. And I think that we've started to get that wrong,
Mhm.
because raising investment, it just means that you were able to convince some investors, or maybe even just a single venture capital firm, to invest in your company. Well,
Mhm.
that has little to do with customers, and that has little to do with the product, and that has little to do with solving the problem. Sometimes it does, but the things don't always link. And so I think that the best source of funding is still through customers. if
Mhm.
if you can solve a problem that customers value, and you can iterate with them on that solution, then customers who buy the product, subscribe, etc., they
Mhm.
can then fund the rest of the product development. And then if you have to go raise money for scale, because investment really should be used for scale,
Mhm.
not for initial product validation, not for initial problem validation, for scale, then you can go seek investment and you can get it on your terms, because you've already got customers and you've already got revenue, and presumably you've already got some profit associated to that. It's a long, hard slog. It's laborious. You're probably not going to go out and sign up 1,000 customers and have the lifestyle that you want, and for the company to be in the financial position that you want. But if you really want to set your own terms moving forward, and you want to and you don't want to be beholden to investors, getting customers to fund and growing the company out of its own operations is still the best way to fund a company.
I love that you say that. I know a lot of companies are doing that. Like I get emails all the time to invest, like the Wink Wine Club and some other ones are looking for investors all the time. There's lots of companies to invest in. So is the Kickstarter and all those, like, I know GoFundMe's for organizations, but are those types of campaigns still relevant? And do people still do the Kickstarter type campaign, which is kind of customer based, I guess?
Yeah, for sure. And there's a company out there now called Start Engine,
Hmm.
and you can even, it's essentially consumers, anyone who's not an accredited investor can invest through Start Engine into a company that's raising money through the Start Engine platform. Similar to Kickstarter, but companies going through Start Engine can raise a lot more money, and it takes some of the regulatory things out of the way. And yeah, there's a funny, a very personal story. So I'm an outdoor adventure person. I like hiking and rock climbing and kayaking. And there was a company on Kickstarter many years ago now called Oru Kayak, and it's spelled R-U-R. I'm going to get this wrong. Let me pause. O-R-U Kayak, and they were on Kickstarter. I remembered seeing them. I put a little money in, I got a t-shirt or something out of it. And then like 6, 7 years later, I remembered them, and now I have two of them because they're fold up. The Oru part comes from origami. They're fold up kayaks. You can fold them up into like a carrying case. And so yeah, Kickstarter is still a very valuable option. And the thing that I like about Kickstarter and Start Engine and things like that, and platforms like that, is that they keep the company very close to the problem, the product, and customers, because those platforms often facilitate, hey, you're going to raise $50,000, $100,000, whatever it is, and you do that by offering a product that you're going to then deliver to those customers, and they give you feedback on it so you can modify the product moving forward. So yeah, I think they're often called crowdfunding platforms. I think it's still a very valid way to raise money, but that's not for everybody either. And I think it's one of the things that founders companies really need to figure out is what's the right funding mechanism for their company based upon the problem they're solving, the product that they're bringing to market to solve the problem, and then their sort of vision and trajectory as a company. Because one financial mechanism, does not fit all.
Yeah, and I think you're right. It's like they wave a big flag, like you see on the news feeds. They raised 7 million. They raised $15 million. Like it's this huge success, and it's not like their revenue has increased by 15 million. It's just that they raised 15 million is what they're celebrating. I think you're right. We have that backwards. Tell us, when you're developing a product, how important is it to develop the story that you are going to share about the product to gain an audience?
Oh, massive. And I think it's one of the things that most founders, well, most might be an overstatement, many founders for sure, don't understand the importance of, because there's the story of the product, there's the story of the founder or founders. Why are they doing this to begin with? There's
Mhm.
the story of the company, right? And then the story has to have different versions for different audiences. There
Mm.
has to be a potential customer story, a potential investor story, a story for potential team members, right? Why would anybody be crazy enough to join this startup that's probably not going to work and it's probably going to fail, right?
Mhm.
So storytelling is incredibly important for startup founders and startup teams, and I don't think that enough people realize it. And if you can get really good at telling the story, it makes sales, recruiting, and fundraising so much easier.
Is there some kind of framework that you have, that you advise for companies to craft their story? Like when we do books for people from scratch, we kind of have a framework that we start with. Is there anything that companies should be looking for? Any kind of formula to just to craft their story?
Yeah, I think there's two pieces of advice I would give people around crafting their story. One is make sure you clearly identify, and this is just basic storytelling, but for those that don't sort of understand it, it's critical. Make sure that you clearly identify the protagonist, right?
Mhm.
And also clearly identify the antagonist, the problem. right? So you've got to create a scenario where here's the problem, here's the bad guy, and why you and your company and your team are the ones that are capable of saving the day, right?
Mhm.
The other thing that I would say is they need a story arc that talks about a sort of current state and
Mhm.
then a new reality. So here's the problem, right? Here's the antagonist, here's the protagonist, the team and the company, and then here's the current state, and then here's the envisioned new state, right? Once this company is successful, how does that change people's lives? How do people operate differently, et cetera? So those are the two things that I would tell people. Lots of nuance, of course, inside of those things, right?
Mhm.
But I think that those are the two sort of fundamentals that I sort of stress to people.
I really like how you talked about the different stories for the different audience, because I think a lot of times people say, well, oh, this is my story and this is the story I'm going to tell all the time. And you have to think about who's listening to that story. Is it for your team members? I really like how you have that. Is it for the customer? Is it for, the investor? What is that story, and how does it differentiate depending on who you're targeting? So I really like how you did that. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I've had some founders tell me, well, that makes them feel a little less authentic because they've got different stories for different audiences. And my response to that is, well, the core should be the same,
Right.
but investors care about different things than potential team members do, than customers do. So you wouldn't go if you wouldn't go if you were trying to attract other entities, right, to some proposition, you wouldn't tell people who have different interests the same story. And so you've got to make sure the story resonates, and that's why I think it's important to have different stories for different constituents. That's why, I mean, this is probably a really bad example given the current political climate, but politicians are really good
Mhm.
at telling different stories to different constituents, hopefully staying centered around a core message and belief.
Mhm.
That's the piece for politicians that seems to get, kind of squishy. But
Mhm.
founders sort of have to take a card from the deck of politicians and make sure that they're telling a story that's going to resonate with a
Mhm.
particular constituency.
Yeah, so true. And sometimes you have to, I hate to use the word dummy it down, but for some places, you need to keep it simplistic. I guess that's a better word. Sometimes your story is more simplistic and other parts it's more complex depending who you're talking to as well. Let's get into, who do we have to be to accomplish this success as a founder, right? So we all have different traits, but there's certain traits like we have to step into be an entrepreneur. Who do we have to be? Do we have to muscle up on our leadership skills? Do we have to muscle up on, our stamina? What are those things that we should be trying to focus on to make yourself prepared to step into this entrepreneurial role?
Yeah, a couple of key points there. Um, I think if you're going to take this, what is sure to be a very chaotic, fluid journey, then I think that you have to have your life in order to do that.
Mhm.
So if you're thrashing right in your life currently, it's
Mhm.
probably not a good time to try to start a company,
Mhm.
because there's going to be a lot of unknowns as part of the company entrepreneurial endeavor. Probably not great if your life isn't fairly stable and has some order around it. The other thing I would say is um, being an entrepreneur fundamentally means that you're a problem solver, because you have a hypothesis of trying to solve a problem that you're trying to um, monetize and build a company around, and then you're just dealing with an unending series of problems trying to run and grow the company.
Mhm.
And so if you're not comfortable, as I call it in the book, if you're not comfortable running to the fire, and that means essentially dealing with problems head on, you're probably not ready to be an entrepreneur, because it is an unending series of problems. And if you're not comfortable and wired to say, all right, one, I'm not surprised that there's these unending series of problems and I'm going to deal with them head on, then you're probably not in a mindset, where you should be starting a company. And then I would say it's really important for founders to be self-aware. understand what makes you tick. Why do you make the decisions that you make? What gets you emotional, what gets you fired up, what gets you angry, because you're going to have all of those emotions and more as part of starting a company and dealing with the rejection and dealing with people that disappoint you and mistakes that you make along the way. And
Mhm.
so if you don't understand how you tick, and you start reacting to things, you have very little chance of then understanding, why did I react that way? Why did I decide the way that I decided? So I think self-awareness for founders is also critical. And then, sleep and eating well and all the other things, because it's gonna consume you for some period of time. So making sure that you're taking care of yourself is also critically important.
I think that's great because I think a lot of times people forget that focus, especially as a mom. I'm always thinking about my kids, and as an entrepreneur, I'm always thinking about my business. So it's like, oh yeah, you got to think about yourself too. Make sure you're healthy, eating right, working out, all the things that it takes to be a whole balanced person, right?
Yeah, the sun has now gone behind some clouds, so it's not as bright as it once was. So my face is probably going to be back in darkness. And with my hat, I have to keep my hat on because my hair is all messed up, and I'm wearing a dirty hat and a dirty shirt because there's construction happening at the cabin today. I'm trying to participate in some of it.
That sounds fun. Well, you gave us a lot of great information. Can't thank you enough for coming on today, Ryan.
Thanks for
Yeah.
having me. Appreciate it.
Tell us where people can go to find your book and to find you and to get more information.
Yeah, the book is thefoundersmanual.com. And then there are links to Amazon off of that. And then my personal speaking page is ryanfrederick.biz. And that's my last name is spelled Frederick. And then my products firm site is awh.net. And the team there builds custom digital software products for clients.
Perfect. We'll put those links up in our show notes as well as on the YouTube video for people to check out.
Great. Thank you.
Well, thanks for coming, and remember to subscribe to our show before you leave if you haven't subscribed already, and to share it on social media, because there was a lot of great content here today, and we always provide you with great content. Remember, again, if you're looking to write a book and publish a book and you'd like to be a #1 best-selling author, we guarantee all our authors will be bestsellers, as even our very first book published was a #1 best-selling book. So contact us at eliteonlinepublishing.com, and we will see you next time. Have an outstanding day.
Bye.
Hey, are you looking to increase your revenue, build credibility, and elevate your brand? This podcast is brought to you by Elite Online Publishing, an innovative publishing and full spectrum marketing company. They will publish and market your book to make it a #1 bestseller. Becoming an author is the best way to market your business. So contact them at eliteonlinepublishing.com today. All of their authors become #1 bestsellers.